Hey guys, Jamie here with Couchside Coffee. We are speaking with Heidi with the Child Advocacy Center. You are going to hear maybe some triggering things with child abuse, child sexual abuse. So we just wanted to give you a heads up. If this is not something that you feel like you can listen to, skip to the next episode. And if you can listen, it's very insightful and something our community can get involved with. Thanks. Welcome to Coffee on the Couch. Coffee on the Couch. Hi, Couchside Coffee. Jamie here. I have an amazing guest whose organization is doing amazing work within our community. I have Heidi with the Northeast Missouri Child Advocacy Center. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
So we are going to talk about what they do, how they help children, families. I was very fortunate to be asked to take a tour, so I did that. Was that last Friday?
I think so.
They all run together.
I think so.
So we will post that and a little bit of the tour and what they do along with this footage. We were so excited to have them on and talk to Heidi.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you for having me. This
Absolutely.
is great.
Yeah. So
I'm excited.
we did a sponsor for a 5K last summer, and then your boss, oh my gosh.
Heather.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've had so much espresso today, I can't even think. Heather contacted me, and so we were able to collaborate, and we're going to do some fun things with PJs and you guys, and I'm super excited. We're going to talk about what we're drinking today. So, Heidi, you were going to start off with a hot vanilla matcha, but why did you decide to go cold?
So I was going to get a hot one because I'm cold. It's rainy out.
Yes.
But the barista, she was like, oh, I usually get it iced. And I was like, is it better iced? And she's like, I like it better. So I usually always go with whatever the barista says because I trust their
judgment.
Yeah. So she said iced matcha, oat milk, vanilla. But then she was like, you should put sweet foam on top too. And I was like, okay.
And what do you think?
It's great.
Yeah?
Yes. It's sweet.
It is sweet,
So if I was needed, I might next time do either cold foam or the vanilla.
Or do you like half sweet?
Or half sweet.
Yeah, they can do half the
that.
pumps in there.
Yeah, but it's good. It's what I needed this afternoon.
Yeah. It's so dark. It's 3 o'clock here and it looks like it's 8 p.m. I'm doing, so when this airs, our Southern Wedding Cake will be out. So that's what I'm drinking is a hot Southern Wedding Cake latte.
That sounds good.
So that has almond and vanilla in it. Ooh. And then we usually, I don't know the details just yet, but usually there's like a Southern Wedding Cake sweet cold foam that goes on top.
Oh, that sounds good. Does that come in decaf?
Oh,
you do that with
all
decaf?
of our drinks can come in decaf.
Can be decaf? Okay, because I have to watch my caffeine sometimes, but yeah.
I probably should have done it decaf because I am like wired. Can you tell us like what's your mission? What do you guys do? Just a short little blurb.
Yeah. So the primary goal of child advocacy centers is really to ensure that children disclosing abuse or neglect or anything like that are not further victimized by those intervention systems that are meant to protect them. So kind of walking with children and families through a child abuse investigation. So that's really the core and why CAC started. The services have kind of spanned out from there to include prevention, advocacy, so forensic interviews, which is kind of the core, and then therapy and all those kinds of things as well.
So when you say forensic interviews, that's talking with police officers or detectives, or what does that entail?
Yeah, so it's actually not so back in the day, children would go to like an interrogation room to be interviewed by a police officer, and then a lot of times have to talk to someone from family services, and then a lot of times prosecuting attorneys. So they're going to up to 9 different people and reliving the biggest trauma of their life. So that's kind of where CACs came in. So besides the fact that kids were being re-traumatized, also those testimonies were getting torn apart in court by defense attorneys. So they would finally get to court, they would be trying to prosecute or press charges, and then those testimonies were getting torn apart because nobody tells the same experience the same way every time. So if you're going to up to 9 different people and telling the same thing, especially with kids, there's going to be differences. And so those testimonies were getting torn apart. So at CACs, we are actually a neutral party, so we're a nonprofit. And we partner with law enforcement, children's division, juvenile office, all of those entities during the investigative process. And we actually have interviewers on our staff, so they're not talking directly to the officers and things like that.
And that could be scary too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure. So our interviewers are trained in a national protocol to speak with the children, take their disclosure, and talk to them in a non-leading way, but also in a child-friendly and developmentally appropriate way.
Yeah, because you could have a 2-year-old versus 18-year-old probably,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
ages. Wow, that's tough work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot, but all of the staff are great, and all of them say, whenever people are like, how could you do this? They're always like, it's an honor. How could I not do this? You
Sure.
know, to be here and to provide a safe space for kids and to kind of, start that path to healing is so important to everyone there.
And what I noticed, the first thing I noticed when we walked into, so there's 2 different sides to your office. One is where the children, families come in, I'm assuming, and then one is like your offices, right?
Like admin.
So when we were able to tour where the children come in, I mean, it looks almost similar to like a schoolroom or a daycare room. Like there's different coloring stations and puzzles and all these things where I think that would be way more comfortable than going into a police station where
Right.
it's like sterile. There's nothing on the walls.
Yes.
It's very, I'm an adult and I don't want to walk into a police station,
Right.
Yeah. So I think that starts it off the bat like a little bit calming.
Yeah, everything we do is according to our accreditation too, and very intentional. So while you walk in and you see like games and puzzles and coloring, we also don't see a lot of like electronics or too much where the kids won't want to go back to the forensic interview room. We also don't introduce a lot of fantasy out there, so we don't have a lot of like princesses and castles and that kind of thing. It's very almost like Montessori, like just kind of like blocks and puzzles and games, because we from this very start want to build the credibility of that child, and just we don't want to introduce any fantasy into our conversations with them.
I wouldn't ever thought of that, but that makes so much sense. Yeah. So I'm assuming your staff are people who put all this together are probably like psychologists. Like who would have like thought and guided you guys into how to build this room?
Yeah, so CACs are nationwide, so we're part of a large network.
Okay.
All of those CACs function a little bit differently. So our CAC, we're a standalone nonprofit. So a lot of other CACs are under an umbrella organization, maybe a mental health facility or a hospital or something like that.
Okay.
So we're standalone, but yes, there have been accreditation standards that are set for the forensic interview, for the rooms. And that's all based on research of what is going to make the child most comfortable, what's going to be a block in court or a block for the child. So everything's very intentional, which is cool, but it's also like one of those things of like, you don't think in legal terms most of the time of like, oh, this could look bad.
Yeah.
So we've always got to be thinking of that legal aspect as well.
Wow. How did the Child Advocacy Center get started in general?
In general?
Yeah.
So CAC started back in the 80s. So there was a prosecuting attorney who took a child abuse case all the way through prosecution. And at the end of that case, they were successful. The charges were filed, prosecution was made. And he felt very proud of himself, but the family came back to him and they said, this was such a horrible experience for our kid. We wouldn't do this again if we had to, and really just expressed to him that their child had been traumatized more by the process, almost more than just the abuse itself.
Because those things can take years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cases can take years, they had just gone through so much. And so that prosecuting attorney set out to find a better way. And so that's what brought it about, and kind of set the best practices for law enforcement and for Children's Division or CPS or DFS, whatever it is in your state. So that's kind of how they got started since the 80s.
Wow. Just a simple question, right? That's what started it all?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
I mean, really just somebody who saw a problem and realized the criminal justice system isn't set up for victims, much less small children. So really just was like, what can we do? How can we make this better?
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges you see children in our own community, Lake St. Louis, Winsville, St. Charles County, face right now that needs to be addressed or work on being addressed?
Yeah. I think there's I think all over, it's kind of the same. I think, not to sound old and crotchety, but I do think the internet has brought a lot of challenges, and kids having smartphones so young. I think that has introduced another level of abuse or exploitation and things like that, that I think is challenging for kids and families, because parents aren't sure how to monitor it and also give them independence. And with my kids, it's like, I don't want to keep them from everything, but also, like, especially working here, it's like I got to keep them safe. So I think that internet, and especially the smartphone, having it right there all the time, access to social media and people texting you, and so much, the statistics on like exploitation and even just sexting among middle schoolers and things like that. I think there's so much that they're facing that, when we were kids, wasn't even a thing.
Which probably causes another issue, right? So we're parents now. We didn't have social media. I didn't have a cell phone until I was 16 when I started driving.
Yep.
And even then, I don't think texting was out. That ages me. But
yeah,
I didn't have social media until I was like halfway through college, right? So I don't even know how to properly educate my children on what to do, what not to do, these sites, not these sites, things to look out for, predators on social media, self-esteem, those types of things. So is that something that is out there for parents?
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources. We're really proud that at our CAC we have a whole prevention team. So they are there talking. So they're talking to kids from early childhood all the way through high school to help them with body safety. So in-person things like, private body parts, like they're not for other people to look at or touch. And if someone tries to, here's what you can do. But then also as they're getting into third grade, that's when we kind of are talking about internet safety. We were doing it at fifth grade, and then we were like, that's way too late. They're already online. So we bumped it down to third grade. So that's when we started talking to kids about how to be safe online, and just introducing different things like your personal information, keeping that safe, what to do if you have a concern, who you can go talk to. And then we also, so we have all these kids programs, but then we have adult programs that mirror those. So we're talking to parents about how to keep their kids safe and giving them tips. So we're not out there to say like, don't ever let your kids on this app or this, website or whatever, because we know every family's different, but more just some guidelines of how to keep them safe, tips for talking to your kids, because that's the biggest thing, is kids are always gonna be smarter than us. They're, I feel like they're gonna be one step ahead of us, but
right.
Having that relationship and open conversations is really key to keeping kids safe.
Wow. Hey everyone, Jamie here with PJ's Coffee in Lake St. Louis. I am here to remind you that we still have our BOGO special going on Monday through Fridays. What's better than one drink but two? So every Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., you can do a BOGO on any drink, any size. Make your afternoon special. Come after work, come after school. We want to see you and we want to give you that BOGO. So check us out. Thanks. We talked about the services you have as far as like forensic interviewing, those types of things. Can you walk us through the process of how a child and the family receive that support?
Yeah, so the process usually starts with a referral from one of our multidisciplinary team members. So that's law enforcement, children's division, juvenile office, all those team members that are involved in an investigation. So we get a referral typically from law enforcement or children's division, which is in Missouri, that's our CPS, DFS. And then we start that process to get the intake, works with those teams and works with the family to get the child in for that interview. Once the child comes in, the child has the forensic interview. We have advocates who work with the caregiver. So whoever the non-offending caregiver is, sometimes it's grandma, sometimes it's mom, sometimes a foster parent, things like that. Sometimes we do have cases where there's not really a caregiver and it's children's division or law enforcement coming in. We also do mobile interviews. So sometimes we're going out to schools or hospitals if it's needed. We do have equipment for that as well. So while the child's receiving their interview, an advocate is working with that caregiver. A lot of times, this is the first time someone's actually sat down with a caregiver to say, how are you? What do you need? And kind of answer their questions about the process, because a lot of times they're thrown into something that they're reeling from this information that their child's been hurt in some way, and really trying to navigate these systems. So they're sitting down with them, finding out what resources they need, connecting them with people in the community, and kind of answering next step questions. After the forensic interview is finished, the child is out with our child and family coordinator. So that coordinator is doing kind of a therapeutic or just a calming activity with them. Sometimes they'll play Uno or checkers or draw, or sometimes the teenagers are like, I just want to be left alone, like just let me be by myself.
Sure.
But there's someone with them to kind of help return them to a neutral state so they're in a good place when they leave. And then the caregiver comes back, and that caregiver is able to meet with the advocate, but also the detective or prosecuting attorney or whoever is involved in the case, so they can kind of answer those, because usually the question is what happens next, like what's going to happen. The parent doesn't view the forensic interview, and we don't tell them what was said in the interview typically, unless it's something very general so that they know what's happening next. But that's not something the caregiver views.
Is that for a legal aspect?
Yes, it is, but also just because they don't need that trauma either.
Sure.
They don't need to hear the child describe in vivid detail, the abuse that took place. So it's a little bit of both. But yeah, we give them any information, and it's typically not us, it's the law enforcement or children's division, because they are the investigative parties. So they kind of take the lead on that wrap-up meeting. And then from there, a lot of times we give the child a blanket and stuffed animal as they leave for any child or siblings that come in, just as a comforting gift to go home with. And that's when they leave. The advocate always stays in touch with them. So the advocate is there for the duration of however long they need, even after charges are pressed or anything that happens. The advocate is always there to support them. And then a referral is made if the family wants, for our therapy department. So every child has access to therapy if they need it or want it. Some families don't want it. Sometimes they already have a therapist. But that referral can be made down to our therapy office, so they can start that intake process there, so they can kind of move forward.
In therapy, is that just for the child, or can that be for the family in whole?
Yes, it's for both, for anyone who's affected by the trauma. So if one child is the victim, but their siblings have been affected because their whole household has been disrupted and things like that, or mom has trauma that she hasn't worked through and she doesn't know how to parent her child, because we can't work with the child, unless their whole family is in a good place. So yeah, they're working with the family as a unit, and for as long as they need. But also we say once a client, always a client. So the child can come back too. So if they kind of process the trauma when they're 8 years old, and they are in a good place and healthy, and we discharge, but then they get up to middle or high school, and all of a sudden things are coming back, or if they are going to court and then things are coming back up, they can always come back and we can work with them again. Sometimes it's just a few sessions to kind of work through something, and sometimes it's kind of, we're going to do some treatment again.
Wow, that's awesome. What role does the community play in helping you guys help these children, but also what role can the community play to help heal and help these families move forward?
Yeah, I am a big believer that everybody plays a role in this. Whether you have children or not, we all have children in our lives typically. And if you don't, there's kids in your community, and it's the adult's responsibility to keep kids safe. So there's several things I think community members can do. I think just being aware, keeping your eyes open and ears open, and knowing what to do if something does come up to you. We've had cases where, a child finally escapes and runs down the street to a neighbor's house that they don't know and knocks on their door. So what are you going to do in that instance? It's something that's rare, of course, but knowing what you're going to do if you do see something happening or see someone in Walmart or something like that, just kind of having that in the back of your mind, and being aware. Of course, we'd love for the community to get involved with us. We have a lot of different opportunities for people to support the Child Advocacy Center, either financially or just, spreading awareness and things like that, things like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways, but I think it starts with kind of being willing to kind of open your eyes to things.
Can you, while maintaining confidentiality, can you share a success story Do you have like one in your mind that you can share
Yeah,
with us?
I have a lot. I have a couple because those are the ones we tuck away and, are close to our heart.
Sure.
The first one that comes to mind is we had at our gala last year, we had a survivor speaker, a teen girl who had been through the forensic interview and been through our therapy department. And she stood up as a speaker, but she had been sexually abused by a family member. And come in for a forensic interview. She finally kind of got the courage up to tell someone in her family, and action was taken. But she stood up there and she just talked about what therapy had done for her. She talked about how she had been, right after the disclosure, she had been not able to concentrate in school. She'd been just falling asleep. She wasn't able to sleep at night. Just kind of all those trauma, responses that we have, and kind of shared about how hard that was, but how her family had supported her and the therapy and services at the CAC. And she just stood up there and it was so amazing to see her say, I am in a great place right now. I am doing great in school. I'm in band. My family is in a good place. And she talked about forgiving her perpetrator. She talked about just, being in a really healthy place. And to me, that's just amazing that a teen girl can, stand in front of 500 people and share that experience, but also just the growth she had experienced. So that's always the first one. We had another one with our prevention program, because it's always hard to measure prevention, right? Because something hasn't happened. But there was a case that came in for an interview where a young girl was, at home. There was a family friend, her older brother's friend was over, and he was showing her pornography on his phone, and then asking her to act it out with him. And she got her toys and she said no, and she ran away and she went and told her mom, which is exactly the steps we talk about in our prevention program. Is if someone's trying to do these things, say no, get away to a safe place and tell someone. And when they came in, we were telling the mom, like, great job, like she knew what to do. That's so great. She's like, actually, she had a program at school and they taught her these steps, and that's how she knew what to do when he was, trying to exploit her in that way. So it's a hard story, but it's like, no, that's good. Like, that's exactly what you would hope would happen if your child was in that situation.
Yeah.
So that's another one that was really cool.
Let's talk about some signs of child abuse or neglect that community members should be aware of. I know, I don't know the exact term off the top of my head, but like teachers, they are mandated reporters.
Mandated reporters. Yes.
I was going to work through it. What about a community member, right? So I own a coffee shop. I have young baristas. What are some signs that I can look for, or that the average community member can look for?
Yeah.
Look at the weather out there.
Yeah, and you're right. Mandated reporters, they should be trained in all of those things, and anyone can take a class for mandated reporting, so they know what to look for, because there are so many nuances to it. There's a lot of different, symptoms or things you can look for. A lot of it's just behavioral changes, and it kind of varies depending on the age. But any kind of behavioral changes, or especially like sexual behaviors coming up that seem out of the ordinary or aren't age appropriate. And it's one of those things that if you see one symptom, that doesn't necessarily mean it's abuse, but start paying attention. If a teen's becoming very withdrawn, or if a child is suddenly avoiding a person or a place that typically they'd wanted to go before.
Yeah.
We've heard families come in and they're like, she used to want to go to the store and go out on all these adventures, and all of a sudden she was like, no, I just want to stay at home. And when they ask her about it, she was like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to run into so-and-so while I'm out and I don't want to see them. And so that was kind of a cue of like, well, what's going on? Why are you all of a sudden, your typical behavior is changing? But yeah, I think those, we have a list on our website of typical developmentally appropriate sexual behaviors for kind of like different age ranges. Which is really helpful as a mom, because, it's like, okay, what's normal and what's not normal.
Yeah. They don't teach you that in the hospital when you come home with the baby.
Yeah, and I don't think we grew up with that. I think we grew up, at least me and a lot of my friends, of like, you don't really talk about sex at all, but it's normal for kids to be curious and explore and ask questions or try things. But at what point is it a problem? So some of those are really helpful. If a kid's drawing pictures and drawing genitalia on a picture, then that's fine. But if they're doing it over and over and it's like dramatic and that's like hyper focus for them, that might be a concern.
Sure. Okay. And we will post in our show notes, we'll post how to get a hold of you, website,
Perfect.
all that stuff. So no need to like rattle that off. We will do that for you.
Okay, perfect.
How can local businesses, schools, residents support what you're doing at the Child Advocacy Center?
Yeah. I think it goes back to kind of that awareness like I was talking about. I think, again, there's a role for everything. The schools, if we aren't in most of the public schools, we are in there with our prevention programs.
Good.
But if there's a private school or even like a mom's group or a church group or anything like that, we'd love to talk to them and talk about setting up a prevention program. Those are all free of cost. So that's one way they can kind of be informed and partner with us. As far as other businesses and things like that, we have sponsorship opportunities. Obviously, like financial support for the CAC is always amazing since we are a nonprofit. But even just being involved and partnering, kind of like this, giving opportunities to spread the message is just huge.
Yeah. Because I wasn't aware that you guys would go to like PTC meetings, do those types of things, go into churches. I wasn't aware that that was free and something that you can do. I mean, how awesome would it be to, if you have an elementary or middle school PTC group, you bring your prevention team and you can help parents like learn how to block certain sites or like go on cell phones and block things to help keep your children safe. I might sound really naive, but that's something I don't really know how to do, Yeah. My son doesn't have a phone, but eventually he will,
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool when I did the tour. That kind of sparked something in my brain. I'm like, that's genius.
Yeah.
Prevention.
Prevention and awareness. We're happy to come out anytime.
Okay. What's one misconception about Child Advocacy Center work that you'd like to clear up?
Ooh.
If there is one.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything major. There's probably a few small things. I think one misconception that I think is out there is, first of all, people don't know about us. But when they do, it always seems like our services are for someone else. That would never happen to me, or that's for those crazy cases I see in the news. Or, child abuse. That's if a parent is like beating their child, and since I'm a good parent, then my kids are fine and I don't need to worry about that. I don't have to think about it. But really, our services, you never know what's going to happen. I've seen great parents come in because predators and perpetrators they're sneaky and they're manipulative, and you never know. So not that we live in fear of that, but just to be aware. And our services are not just for those other people, but for everyone.
I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm going to put you on the spot, but it did take me by surprise, the statistics. There was like a 1 in 6 chance of
there's a lot
of abuse. I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, so one of the big ones is 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before they're 18 years old. And that's a loose one because we know that boys especially underreport.
Sure.
And a lot of kids, the average age for disclosure, according to one study, was about 52 years old because most kids...
They waited that long?
Yes. You see a lot of adults now that are just now disclosing because as kids, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the education, they didn't have safe people to talk to about it. So a lot of kids wait to tell. Some of them never tell or wait to tell until they're way older. The other one is that 90% of the time, the perpetrator is someone the child likes, loves, or lives with. So it's not a stranger in a van that's pulling up. It's not zip ties on the parking lot, targeting you for sex trafficking. Like that's not a thing. But it's typically someone the child likes, loves, or lives with. And even with online stuff, usually they feel like they have a relationship with that person, even if it's still a stranger.
So if that person will build a rapport or relationship or whatever.
Yeah, they're building that trust. Building the trust with the child, but also kind of building trust with the family and the whole community to get access to those children, which is why we want to be in schools and churches and those youth-serving organizations so that we can help prevent predators from having access to kids.
My goodness. How can people in Lake St. Louis and surrounding areas reach out if they need help or want to support your organization? We talked about, what do you call them? Multidisciplines. We'll do referrals. What happens can a parent reach out to you if their child discloses something to you? What's their plan of action?
Yeah. So we always recommend for people, if they have a suspicion, to call that hotline number, the Missouri Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline,
Okay.
which I think you can put in the show notes,
We
right?
will.
So that's the first course of action. But we do have parents call us all the time, and that's more than okay for, especially if it's like, I think something might be happening. I don't know. What do I do? Anytime someone needs to talk through a problem, we have advocates who can talk to them. We're more than happy to help. And we've had families show up before. We do have to have a referral, but sometimes if someone shows up in our parking lot, we're like, we'll work the case backwards. We'll help you. We'll help you make that hotline. We'll help give you resources, that kind of thing, so that we're not going to just turn anyone away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Take the words right out.
Yeah, give us a call. Facebook message, whatever. Yeah, we're happy to be here for anyone.
Okay. What's one message you'd like to leave with our listeners today? That's a tough one. You got so many.
I know. I think just that we all play a role in this. Like I said earlier, everybody has responsibility and plays a role in keeping kids safe, whether you have kids or, you're single, a bachelor, like whatever. If you're on playing your video games and you see something sketchy, you need to know what to do. Like, go report it, make a cyber tip line. We all have some sort of role to play, and this isn't an issue that we can be naive about. This is something we need to pay attention to, even though it's hard and it makes us feel icky. It's something that our kids deserve for us to pay attention and to take action.
What would you say for someone who, you mentioned playing video games, right? What if someone's on the fence? Is it safer to just report it and be wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you don't have to know that something is happening, you don't have to know for sure that there's abuse or neglect or something happening, you can always call in. It's better to report a suspicion. So even if you suspect something's just off, or I saw something, maybe not, we recommend to call. It's better to call and report your suspicion, and then let them do the investigation to see what's going on. And that's that Missouri Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline. But you can also call law enforcement, especially if it's something that seems serious.
Yeah. Okay. Which our Lake St. Louis Police Department, I love them so much.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal.
They're great partners of ours.
I can't speak more about them. They're amazing. Is there anything, we're going to get to a call of action here, anything else that you want to share that I missed? I think I want to talk a little bit more about your prevention aspects.
Okay.
Because what better way to stop it than to prevent it, right?
Yeah.
Is that something they can call your office and ask for?
Yeah. If
You just
someone
set it up
calls
that
and
way?
just asks for a prevention team, they'll transfer to someone, and then we can talk through. Our prevention team is great about kind of customizing too. So we've had homeschool groups that come in, and they'll come into our office and we'll do a prevention program together with them. We've modified all of our programs for special education classrooms too, and have programs for parents of kids with special needs, because those kids are about 3 times higher risk for abuse, simply because of their vulnerabilities. So our prevention team does a great job of modifying and customizing to whatever they need. They also have that, it's called Preventing Predators in the Workplace, but kind of like I was talking about before, with helping youth serving organizations. So if it's a daycare or a school or a soccer club or something, to set up policies, have policies in place to protect them and to protect their kids. Because nobody wants to have a scandal on their hands, for one thing. But also, obviously, more importantly, to keep the kids safe. So that we can help them set up policies, but then also kind of role play and teach them how for adults to hold other adults accountable. Because you're likely not going to see the abuse take place, but you might see some boundary crossing. You might see them doing something that seems a little off, or having one-on-one sessions when they don't really need one-on-one sessions, or being unsupervised and things like that. So really helping keep kids safe through those organizations is a big thing.
What other type of prevention education do you have? So I'm sure there's like a cyber one.
Yeah, so we have several, like I said, so we have kind of our body safety that's just teaching kids and the parents kind of mimicking about keeping the kids safe and helping them have their own bodily autonomy. Teaching parents, use the right terms for their body parts, because that in and of itself, if a perpetrator targets a kid and that child is using the correct terms for their own private body parts, that is a warning to them of like, hey, someone's talking to them. And there's a statistic out there of how huge that is in preventing abuse, just because the child knows the correct names for their private body parts.
Really?
So that's a huge thing we tell parents. Just not having unsupervised one-on-one, always making the interactions observable or interruptible, even between children, because we're seeing a lot of peer-on-peer abuse as well. Which that's a whole other thing we didn't get into, is we have a whole program for problematic sexualized behaviors. So kids who are displaying sexual behaviors outside of what's normal or typical, or child initiators, when the child is initiating on another child, because those are really difficult situations, but there's a lot of success in helping treat that and help kids find those boundaries and coping skills, which is again huge in prevention, because then they're not going to continue those behaviors on into adulthood. So that's another whole thing we didn't get into. So then we have our cyber, we have internet safety is what we call it, and that's for parent or children. And then our mandated reporter training as well.
Wow. It's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs.
You guys are
we can
doing,
list them all.
When I did the tour, I was baffled by, the hard work, but good work that you guys are doing, but just the amount of multi-discipline that goes into it with the advocates, the counselors, police force, everything. You guys think about like every little detail, and that says a lot about how passionate I think everyone that works there is.
Yeah,
about helping children and families. That's definitely one thing I noticed taking the tour. So for what it's worth, I thought that was really awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you were able to come out. And yeah, our staff is amazing. There's a lot of passionate people there. I think the people that are there want to be there and are passionate about helping kids.
Yeah. Let's do our call to action. So people who are listening to this, other business owners, listeners, how can they help you? What do you have coming down the pipeline as far as like fundraisers, or just if someone just wants to give you a donation? Can you talk a little bit about what you have coming?
Yeah, for sure. We have several events throughout the year, fundraisers. Our next one is April 26th, our One with Courage Gala. So that's coming up really quick. And then we'll have a golf tournament in June 6th. So we have a golf tournament, which is great. It's a lot of fun. Get out on the course. So those are some of our big fundraisers. But then along with that, we have opportunities for just supporting in general, just donating or sponsoring events. One thing I do want to mention is that as a CAC, donations to the CAC are eligible for tax credits. So 50% tax credits for donations of $100 or above. And those are different than deductions. So those are dollar for dollar. So those are a really great thing that a lot of people like to take advantage of. Also, if anyone just wants to come in for a tour, we have those scheduled on our website, but also we'll work with people and get them in. I think it's good for everyone to come in and just see the services that are available and learn more and find out kind of how they want to get involved.
One thing that they mentioned in my tour was they were also looking for small donations as far as like snacks, gift cards, gas gift cards, because you have families. I didn't even ask you this, but it's Northeast Missouri, so you got a far range going. So some of these families have to drive. That costs money. Yeah. So something as simple as like a $20 gas card, they can just drop that off, or? Yeah, we service 14 counties. And in that Northeast Missouri area. But yeah, we have a wish list on our website, but small gift cards for gas or fast food, things like that for families have to drive, or if, kids show up sometimes they haven't had lunch or breakfast yet. So, or they're there for a long time.
Those kinds of things are always helpful. Or even just Amazon gift cards for when we have those needs that pop up that don't fit in a budget somewhere. Those kinds of things are always great. We can take clothing or blanket donations at sometimes. We do have to have new, it can be used. But we can take new blankets or stuffed animals because that's something that we give to the children. So
As they leave your facility?
Yes.
I gotcha. Okay. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
It was very
so much for having me.
insightful. I'm looking forward to collaborations with you guys, however PJ's Coffee can help.
Yeah.
Or Couchside Coffee as well. I know this is not a topic normally people would want to listen to or talk about, but I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Very important for our children in our community and parents.
Yeah, it is. It's a heavy topic, but just to leave on a little bit of a high note, I think the key here is the hope and the healing that's there. So it's hard to think about and hear these stories, but when kids come through and have that access to services, there's hope for them to have, a normal, thriving adulthood and childhood. So that's kind of one of the things we talk about is restoring that childhood for kids. And it's possible. It doesn't have to end with, the heaviness. So
Yeah, possible from people like you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.